Hey guys, for Thanksgiving, I decided that I would record a video of a couple of different versions or takes on an apple pie. So it's my son's birthday and he requested apple pie. Now he wants the real thing, and I have myself who would probably want a slimmed down version of it, and then I have a sister who has gluten intolerances, and so she can't have the pie crust. And in an apple pie recipe, there's actually flour in an apple pie. Not a lot, but there is flour in it. So I made the real thing, a Dutch apple pie, which means there's only one crust. And then I made a slimmed down version, my take on apple pie. And I will post later on what I actually use. And this is just my creation. I'm sure there are recipes out there. But I used a real recipe for the Dutch apple pie, and then I did my own creation, my own take on it. And let me show you what I have. So this hasn't baked yet. This is the real Dutch apple pie. That was made with sugar and flour, 8 apples, lemon juice, cinnamon, nutmeg. So that was the apple filling. The pie crust obviously is a lot of fat in the pie crust and flour. And now the topping, which is the best part in my opinion, that's sugar and brown sugar and cinnamon and nutmeg and butter. So you crumble that all on top. This is, I don't know the caloric intake for 1/8 of it, but it's sugar, it's fruit, it's carbs, right? Doesn't mean you can't have it, but this is what you're looking at. So now, this is my take on an apple pie. So you notice I don't have a pie crust. So anybody that has gluten intolerances, you don't want the pie crust unless you find a gluten-free. So I omitted the pie crust. And then I took apples and I sliced them, diced them up, and I added almond flour. So let me show you. Instead of flour, I used almond flour on it. I used cinnamon and I used nutmeg, and then instead of sugar I used honey. So see, I swapped out the sugar for honey for the sweetness. I swapped out the flour for almond flour. I used the apples as normal, and then cinnamon and nutmeg and lemon juice. So I mixed that, that's the filling. Now for the topping, what I did, my take on it, was I used, instead of a cup of flour, I used a cup of oats, and I used a little bit of the almond flour. Okay, so that's the grainy ingredients. I used cinnamon, I used nutmeg, and in lieu of sugar, I used a little bit of honey again. And now instead of butter, I used a little bit of coconut oil. Now in the crumb, in the real apple pie, it calls for 1/2 cup of butter. While I just used enough, and again it was probably about a heaping tablespoon of coconut oil in there just to get that crumbling effect. Oh, and I put walnuts in there as well. So about 1/2 cup of walnuts in there, and then that made the nice crumbly top. I'm gonna bake that in the oven and serve that alongside with the real apple pie. And again, this is for anybody that has gluten intolerances. You know, my sister, I'm sure, is going to have a scoop of ice cream on top of this because there's no gluten in that. And then I bought the real ice cream, so we're going to have this. So here's, you know, just some ideas. You guys need to experiment. I also made for dinner 2 lasagnas. One, a real lasagna, it's a chicken lasagna, but with the real fattening version. And then I made a vegetable lasagna. And again, because my sister has gluten intolerances, instead of using pasta or gluten-free pasta, I took eggplant and sliced it thin, baked it in the oven, so I roasted it, and that became my lasagna. So I will, I'll post that along here as well. But again, you know, I don't have the recipes. I'm just kind of being creative, and this is where you guys can take a look at a recipe. We're not saying deprive and you can't have any of this, but it's always fun, in my opinion, to play around and figure out how can you make it thinner, skinnier, and something that you can eat. because gluten-free doesn't mean deprivation. Being healthy doesn't mean deprivation. It's just finding creative alternatives and then eating in moderation. Oh, the other thing I did add in here with the apples to give it a little bit more sweetness, because I only used honey instead of sugar, I did use some raisins in here. Anyway, I will show you the end results after I get done baking it.